Hey, yeah, we're going to be looking at chapters 4 and 5 of the book Spiritual Leadership by Oswald Sanders. In chapters 4, there's some really good insight that comes out, but I think my favorite chapter is really chapter 5, and I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. But as we look at chapter 4, we see it talks about the difference between natural and spiritual leadership, and this idea that leadership is the capacity and will to rally men and women to a common purpose and the character which inspires confidence. And then what Oswald does here is he begins to take the idea of what spiritual leadership is and this difference between natural and spiritual leadership. Um, we all can have some natural gifts towards leadership, but then also there are spiritual sides to it. And typically we find that when we're leaning on our natural giftedness, we can miss out on the things that maybe God has for us. Spiritual leadership requires us to be focused on who God is and what He's doing in our lives. One of the things he mentioned here is the idea that our leaders born or made, and one of the thoughts comes in ideas that really over time you can be born a leader out of circumstance and timing, opportunities, and things like that. Joseph from the Bible is an example he uses. The idea that Joseph, over time, being in the right place at the right time, working through those things in his life that God allowed for him to learn and grow, allowed him to be at the end where he was, right where God wanted him to be. And so for us, begin to take the opportunities that we have, the timing that's in front of us, and begin to say, God, what are you doing in our life to help us grow and become more like you? Is a good thing. I love this one line he had. He said, "A single life has immense possibilities for good or ill. We leave an indelible impact on people who come within our influence, even when we're not aware of it." The truth is, we do impact people, we influence people. The question is, what are you influencing them to do, and who are you influencing people to become? They're going to follow someone, and if they follow you, where are you leading them? I think chapter 4 just kind of touches on this aspect a lot. But chapter 5 is the one that I think I really loved the most. And one of the biggest reasons is because it really begins to help you decide what are the things in your life that you need to evaluate and see and change or potentially do differently in order to become a leader. He asks a bunch of questions. If you can kind of see here, there's just a whole bunch of questions. Some comes out like, well, how well do you maintain self-control, or how well do you handle criticism? Can you turn disappointment into creative new opportunity? Do you readily gain the cooperation of others and win respect and confidence? In what situations have you been a peacemaker? Uh, can you can you accept the opposition to your viewpoint or decision without taking offense? Uh, do you depend on the praise of others to keep you going? Are people who report to you generally at ease? Are you interested in people? Are you tactful? Is your will strong and steady? Can you forgive others? As you begin to think about these things, there are some really good questions to stop and ponder. He also goes through and says how we handle relationship tells a lot about our potential for leadership. And he gives us about 5 different questions, and asks us to kind of evaluate. He says, do other people's failures annoy you or challenge you? Do you use people or do you cultivate people? Do you direct people or do you develop people? Do you criticize or do you encourage? Do you shun people with special needs or problems, or do you seek out people that way? Just some things to really be considering here. And then toward the end of this chapter, I'm going to read you this section here because I just think it's so powerful and helping us understand and begin to evaluate what are the things in our life we might need to change, adapt, or do differently. It says, if we are overly sensitive when we're criticized and rush to defend ourselves, that must go. If we make excuses for failure and try to blame others or circumstances, that must go. If we are intolerant or inflexible so that creative people around us feel hemmed in, that must go. If we are disturbed by anything short of perfection in ourselves and others, that must go. The perfectionist sets goals beyond their reach, and they sink into false guilt when they fall short. If you can't keep a secret, do not try to lead. If you can't yield a point when someone else's ideas are better, save yourself the frustration of failed leadership. If you want to maintain an image of infallibility, find something else to do besides leading people. The idea here really comes down to a lot of it's about our heart. I heard a quote from Bob Goff this actually past week, and it said this. It says, Jesus doesn't necessarily want our help. He wants our heart. I got a cat behind me. That's crazy.